my parents decided to have another child, I was 9. I couldn't understand much, but I wasn't a fan of their decision nevertheless. When they brought home a little baby girl and everyone started admiring her, I felt astonished, left out, irrelevant. I couldn't understand what all the hype was about. The new baby seemed red, wrinkly, and ugly. I think that's when I started hating her. Ever since that day, my life had turned into a never-ending competition to move the attention off of her and onto me, to prove that I'm more important, or at least that I matter too. That's how I developed the bad habit of, well, imagining stuff. I would come up with the most unbelievable stories and claim that they actually happened to me. Once I told my parents that I twisted my ankle while saving a little boy from a burning house. Another time, I bragged to my classmates that I had hung out with a famous celebrity at her Hollywood mansion and that she had invited me on a trip to Paris. I told so many lies over the years that soon enough, nobody would trust me to even tell what time it was. I was labeled a chronic liar, and my relationships with my parents and classmates were as tense as could be. Since I didn't have friends, I was spending most of my time alone, and since my parents were constantly angry with me, I tried spending less time at home. This resulted in me wandering around the city with my headphones on, completely alone. And that's how I ended up putting my life and the lives of those closest to me at risk. On one of my walks, I accidentally ended up in a pretty bad neighborhood. When I realized where I was, I hurried to go back, but as soon as I turned the corner, I witnessed something I really wish I never saw. There were about 5 men that all looked like hardcore criminals. They were arguing about something. I couldn't hear the words, but they were yelling and aggressively leaning over each other. I immediately understood that something was off, but before I could manage to hide or walk away, one of them got a gun out of his pocket and shot the other guy in the chest several times. I couldn't hold the scream in. The men noticed me, and I ran for my life. I heard gunshots as they tried to shoot me, but I was changing my direction quickly, preventing them from being able to aim. I kept running straight home. That was my mistake. After I ran into my house, I looked out my window only to see them right across the street. They weren't coming closer. They were just standing there, observing and waiting. I shuddered, realizing that they were planning their next steps. I ran over to my parents, who were watching TV. I told them everything and almost begged them to call the cops. They wouldn't listen. They thought that I was once again just lying to them. I told them that I was telling the truth, asking them to just look out the window, but they were so sure that it was just another one of my attempts to attract attention that they wouldn't even consider it. I was so desperate. I needed to do something quick, but what could I do? Should I call the police? Would they believe me? What if the criminals get here before the police? Should I leave the house and attract the criminals' attention to follow me? No, that's just stupid. Should I go out and talk to them and explain that I didn't see anything? Well, that's not smart either. Should I just wait for them to leave? With my hands shaking, I took my cell phone out of my pocket and opened Google search. I inserted the date and the neighborhood where it all started and added gunshots. I found several pages about a gangster fight ending with a homicide. I showed the article to my parents. I told you I wasn't lying, and now they're right outside our house. That was enough to make them doubt and worry. My father cautiously looked out the window. He saw the criminals and went pale. He told my mother to take my baby sister and hide in the basement, and then he called the police. Together, my dad and I blocked the door with all the furniture we could move, and that's when we heard a loud knock. My father put his finger over his mouth and pointed towards the basement. We both rushed down there right before the criminals started to knock the door down. We started to block the basement door too. When we finally heard police sirens, some shouting a few minutes later, and then 2 or 3 gunshots, that was scary. Then everything got quiet and we heard police officers enter the house. Cautiously, we came out of the basement. The police figured everything out pretty quickly. Several criminals were taken out. The rest surrendered. Our front door had 1 bullet hole, but other than that, we were fine. And that was a miracle. That night, my parents and I had a heart-to-heart like never before. I talked through all the frustration that I had felt for years, and they actually listened to me, without assuming that I was just trying to get attention. They signed us up for family counseling, and they made me an appointment with a children's psychiatrist. And I know that we have a long way ahead of us to mend our broken trust and tense relationship, but for the first time in many years, I don't feel like making up stories. In fact, I don't want to lie ever again.